Hi everyone, today I'm doing a test and kind of general review of the Simplicity Bias Tape Maker. In Canadian dollars, including shipping from Simplicity directly, it cost me $338, so it's not a cheap purchase. So with that in mind, we need to make sure it does exactly what you want it to do before you spend the money. That's kind of where this comes in. The only size I've actually tried myself so far is the 1/4 of an inch size bias tip, which is the smallest setting because I wanted it for applique, and it's not working particularly well. And so the support people at Simplicity want to know if all of the other sizes are okay. So I've pre-cut some fabric already. Just a caveat, I haven't actually sewn multiple strips and sewn them together. Obviously, if you were making a lot of bias tape, you probably would do that. And these are also cut from a fat 1/4 knot width of fabric. So if you were doing sewing several strips together, what you would do is you would sew them together at a 45-degree angle and then open and then press the seams open. There's also a little card that comes in there with some of their additional tips that aren't in the instructions. And also on the instructions, it does say press the seam open, trim the points that extend beyond the edge of the strip. So you might have to just get your little scissors out and snip those off if you are joining strips. So to go through what sizes you can make with this machine, it will make quilt binding at this strip is cut at 2.5 inches, and so it finishes at 1 1/4. This strip is cut at 2 inches, so it finishes at 1 inch. Then these are the double fold binding sizes. This one is also cut at 2 inches because this one also finishes at 1 inch, but instead of it just kind of being folded over, it folds the two sides to the center. So that's a 1 inch, a 1 inch binding. Then we have a 3/4 of an inch binding, which is cut at 1.5 inches, 1/2 inch binding, bias binding, which is cut at 1 inch, and then the one that I have already tried and we're going to try it again, it's the it's cut at 1/2 inch for 1/4 of an inch bias tape. So we are going to get this plugged in. It comes in a little box like this, and get started on the test. And we'll probably just start from the bigger sizes and work our way down, making sure we're following all of the instructions exactly as they recommend that we do, and then just see what happens. So I'm going to plug this in and get it warmed up. So this is what it looks like inside. We open it up. We have a little area where you would attach one of these tips. Some of these tips, like the smaller ones, you can leave attached and then close it up and it will stay in place and you'll be able to close it. With these larger ones, you can't do that. So what you do to put them in, it's got a little groove. That goes into the front here, and then it clips at the back. So you literally just go like this, clips into place. This piece goes here, and then we also have this spindle where you can clip the bias tape fabric too, and that goes kind of in there. The clip should really go at this side because then it's going as straight as possible into the machine. So before you even turn it on, plug it in or anything, it says to add the fabric to this spindle. Because I have a selvage here, I'm actually going to wind that bit on first because I don't want that to be feeding first into the machine and causing problems. So we'll give it the best chance we can and give it the cut edge. So you kind of lift that up and push it underneath like that. And then because the fabric's going to be winding this way like this, we're going to wind the fabric in the same direction. The next thing it's going to do is kind of go over this bar, and this little rubber part here can move, so you can move it in when you have the smaller tips attached. So I'm going to leave it there. We then have to take this off, which is the iron plate cover. So as you can see here, there's two surfaces, and it does get very, very hot, just like an iron. It's basically an iron. And then there's like a coated side that works from above and presses from both sides. And then there's the roller, which helps it feed through. I don't know why mine's slightly discoloured, but that's how it came. So that's how that goes. Notice it's not on, it's not plugged in. I have it set to cotton linen because I'm using quilting cotton, but you can just change this dial to whatever you like. There's also a max setting in case you've got particularly stubborn fabric that is natural fibres and isn't going to burn. Next, you're going to need a pin, and that's just to help you feed the fabric through the tip. So we're going to bring it over to here. It's weird, you have to kind of look at the shape here. And actually, to be honest, I find it easier if I just, you know, fed it in and then clipped it into the machine. That's not what the instructions say to do, but I think it's easier to see what you're doing to feed that in. And it should be exactly the size of the gap because you're cutting it at twice the finished size. Some people also say to cut it into a point. It also says this in the instructions. It says cut the end of the strip into a point to make it easier to feed through the tip. So you know what, since we're following all the instructions, we're going to do that. Okay, here are my little scissors. I'm not being particularly accurate. I'm just kind of cutting corners off to make that point. Like that. So we're kind of folding it in half and pushing it through. So that point helps it get a head start within the tip. And now you can see the fabric starting to appear here in this little kind of window on here, and that's where we can get the pin and feed it through. I'm just going to reattach it to the machine. This card that comes in the box does also say, when using the 2 quilt binding tips, you may achieve a better finish by not winding the fabric onto the winding spindle. So if you wanted to not do that, you could definitely choose not to do that. I have a question about this piece, particularly because it kind of feels awkward the way it's having to like twist up here. But it doesn't say to not use this part. This is called the guide bar. And there's nothing in the instructions that says don't use the guide bar. So you see how I've just pulled that fabric through? You want to just pull it so it extends out onto that platform and then to this roller here. The instructions say pull bias strip with raw edges turned under until leading edge is past the edge of the machine, which is there. Replace iron plate cover. So as long as it's past the roller, you're okay. I mean, technically it is just past the machine with this point, but if you haven't got a whole lot of fabric, you know, that can make a big difference. So I'm just going to pull it very slightly further, and then I'm going to reattach this part here. And then what we do with that, it's got these little kind of C shapes, so it's going to grab and pull backwards. So we're going to stick them in the holes and then click backwards like that. So now we're ready to actually switch the machine on. I'm going to just grab the wire and plug that in here. It's in the back like this. And then we're going to switch the on button and wait for it to heat up. And when it's heated up and it's ready to go, this little light here will light up as well. The instructions also say here, the green light goes out after 10 minutes of non-use. Press the reset button, which is this guy, to turn the iron plate back on. So just so you're aware, it does have an automatic timeout feature on it, which is good if you're forgetful like me. I always have an iron with a time off feature. One more thing to mention before the machine actually is ready to go. On the card, it does also say, after feeding the fabric through the tip, make sure the raw edges remain turned under as you pull the leading edge of the fabric past the edge of the machine. I think that's probably quite self-explanatory because obviously you want to see it coming out the way that you expect it to, but that is worth mentioning. It also says make sure the iron plate cover is securely installed. If not properly installed, the fabric may not pass through correctly. And that's an important point with my particular one. One of the screws had come out in transit because it wasn't padded in the box, is my guess. It was just the cardboard box that this came in that I showed you earlier, just rattling around in a larger cardboard box. And so one of these screws here at the top was completely out and the other one was loose. So I got a screwdriver before this video and tightened those up just to make sure that that works. And then that's all of the tips now, apart from one that makes sense for the smaller sizes, which I'll read out closer to the time. There's also a video tutorial, which I have a QR code on this card for, and I've linked that in the description below, just so that you have quick access to it if you don't have this card. This has taken quite some time to warm up. I guess while we're waiting for this to warm up still, because it's taken quite a while, it's kind of starting to smell like it's getting ready. The quilt tip one's kind of curved sideways. So the quilt tips have like a C shape, the way that it goes into the machine, and the bias tips have like a U shape, like a rectangular, almost like a staple shape. So they're very kind of different looking. Obviously it's an upside down U because it goes in that way. But yeah, it's that's the difference between the two tips. I would say it takes longer than an iron to heat up, depending on the iron that you have. I have an Aliso one and they heat up pretty fast. So far the iron is winning ahead of this because also it's not got the fiddly feature to feed it in. Oh, did you see that? The light just came on. So we're ready to go. We've got this green light on there. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to press the run button. And we're just going to keep an eye on it coming out. It's off the spindle. It's gone all the way through. This seems pretty successful actually. And then when it's done, you press run again and it switches it off. This is actually quite cool. I'm not gonna lie. It's quite fun watching it come through and it be perfectly pressed. Like when I press my binding with the raw edges together, somehow I don't know what's going on, but it kind of wobbles sometimes and I'm like, yeah, that's good enough. But this is like perfect. So that is quilt binding size 1, the largest tip that there is. But yeah, it's very simple press because it's just folding it in half. Probably don't need a machine to do that, but it was quite cool to see it happen. For interest of fairness, we're going to do the smaller one now as well. So I'm going to switch the machine off. I'm hoping I'm not going to have it off for too long because otherwise it's going to take me forever to get it warmed up for every single test that we do. But also I don't want to burn myself when I take this part off the machine. So we're going to take the tip off and we're going to switch it for the next one. And these tips all say what they are on them. So this one says 1 inch. We're going to take its advice and not put it on the spindle this time, just because that it will also save me some time, and it mentions that that might be slightly easier. I am, however, going to still cut the tip off because I think that was a good recommendation. Like this. And I am still going to kind of start threading it off the machine because I think it's just easier to be able to see. And it didn't seem to cause any problems in that last run. So let's just do that. Snap that guy in. We are going to take this off. This is going to be hot. This is going to be hot because I've literally just had this on. So disclaimer, don't do this at home. Where's my pin? So this is hot. It even says, caution hot surface. Just don't burn yourself. Don't sue me. Okay, so there we go. I'm just using the pin to take it over the top there so I don't have to get my fingers anywhere near there. Extend it past the length of the machine. All is looking great. Let's stick this back on. Looks good. On. We're going to wait for that green light to come back on again now for this test. If I was doing a really comprehensive test on this machine, I would use different fabrics, but to be honest, most of the time, I'm probably going to be using something like a cotton or a cotton blend. For dressmaking, obviously, the device sizes in different fabrics makes sense. For the quilt binding, these are pretty much going to be always in this kind of fabric anyway, so this is pretty fair for the quilt binding test, but maybe not for the bias binding, especially. Machine's back on. Okay, stop talking. Let's press this run button. Here we go. This is wonky. You see that? It's not very straight here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it with this bar taken off because it does look kind of difficult the way it's feeding in there. I'm going to take that guide off. Also what I could have done as well actually is push that rubber seal closer. I'm just going to take it off. I'm going to press this flat and come back and see if it gets better. I pressed this with a bit of easy pressed fabric treatment, so kind of like a starch substitute. And we're going to try it again. So that extra little bit of starch might help it along as well, but I wanted to use it just to get rid of that crease in the middle. So the machine is off again. We are going to feed the point into the tip. Feeds in pretty easily. Let's take this off. It's still hot. So same applies. Pull that through. We make sure that when it's coming through the machine, and we're not going to touch that metal plate, but we make sure that the edges are coming together like it says in the instructions. I'm going to put this back on. And then we're going to just try it without both the spindle and like the, whatever they call it, the guide bar. Okay, let's switch this on again. And now we wait. We're green. Okay, let's go. Run. Oh, it's looking like it's twisting a little tiny bit, but not as bad as before. Oh, now it's going the other way, potentially. Ooh, let's see. That might be an optical illusion. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's still a bit twisted. You see how it's kind of up, it kind of got a bit, it got good in the middle, and then it just started to go off. So I know that that's twice, and maybe we should try it another time with just this piece and not this piece. But I think in real life, by this point, I would have just got my iron out and just pressed it in half and would have been done. So I'm going to count that as tested. And we're going to switch this off, and then we're going to move on to the largest of the bias binding sizes, which is the 1-inch size. So that's this guy. Okay, so we've got another 2-inch strip. We are going to use this time. I seem to remember reading something about threading it through and then pinching it. So let's make sure we do that. Thread it through and then clip it. Wind it. I'm not going to wind it super tight, but I did just kind of like make sure I had tension on it just to make sure that it was flat. So let's just gently wind that on as evenly as we can. There we go. That goes in here, that goes over here, and then we're going to just make sure that this rubber thing is in the right place. So you see how it's now the width of the strip. I'm just going to go over the top, and that's to stop it from moving like this. This should hopefully help it feed more evenly into the machine. I am also going to cut the tip. Forgot that part, so let's get that done. Pointy, pointy. And then insert that into here. I think if you had this on the machine and this taken off, maybe that would be easier to feed through the end as well. But I honestly, like, just make sure that it, you know, it hasn't shifted anything at the back here if you are doing it the same way as me. So it is feeding through straight, which is going to be absolutely key for success. Okay, let's clip this on the machine. These clip on exactly the same way as the quilt one. It didn't have a very satisfying click, but it is actually on the machine. I'm going to remove this, which is still hot, and feed this through with the pin. I'm going to grab the little tail end that's sticking out, and this is where I'm going to burn myself probably. So let me just grab some tweezers because safety first. But yeah, let's pull this through. There's a bit of resistance, but hopefully that's okay. We want to make sure it extends past the end of the machine. It's looking good. If I look at the back here, it looks evenly feeding inside the tip. So I think we can put this back on and switch this back on. And now we wait again. Green. Okay, let's go. Oh. Didn't like that. Okay, so when it's on this lever, there's a resistance there when it's trying to pull it through. I might not clip it next time. I might just put it through the center and then kind of wind it. Okay, let's see what results we have here with this larger size. So the first part is wobbly, but that's the bit that didn't really kind of get the heat treatment because it had to extend past there. So you're always going to have a bit of kind of wobble, and then it kind of has to compensate for it. So there is a touch of overlap when it first starts, and then it evens itself out. So I would say if I was to measure, you lose 3, 6, maybe 7 or 8 inches of fabric at the beginning. That might be a little bit. But then looking at the rest of it, it's generally good. If we're being really pedantic, there is this tiny overlap, but I mean, if you were making it yourself, you probably would have that too. So I am okay with this size. I don't know when I would really use this size though. I guess maybe if I was, would I do a neckline or something with this size? Possibly. If I fold it in half so that these folded edges are touching each other and all of the raw bits are encased inside, it does feel a little bit lumpy bumpy at the new fold in the center there, just because of that slight overlap. It's not terrible. It would probably be worse if I'd have made it manually. So yeah, that size isn't too bad. That size isn't too bad at all. So what we're going to do now is switch that off and move up to the next size, which is the 3/4 of an inch size. I'm going to try threading it through this on the machine this time. Probably a burn risk at this point, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to take the plate off so I have a bit more maneuverability. Click that guy on, cut off the point. I don't know why I keep forgetting to do that, but let's do it. And then, so if you were feeding it in from the machine, you'd kind of be doing this, which I think is okay on these slightly larger sizes, because that seemed pretty easy, right? And I'm just using my tweezers instead of a pin. It's not feeding evenly through, actually. Let's make sure it's the same at both sides. So that's kind of fiddly. And just keep my eye on it as it goes through to the end. Okay. You know the drill. We're ready. Okay, let's go. Yeah, this looks pretty nice. Again, you've got a few inches where it doesn't work particularly well, though. It seems shorter on this slightly smaller size. I would say there is 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 inches of unusable kind of starter bit that you just kind of cut off and not use. Looking at this, though, this looks really even. Like, this size is really nice. The 3/4 of an inch size. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to use this size very much. But yeah, if you fold it in like this, that would be, I guess, maybe more of a dressmaking kind of size. I mean, I might still be tempted if I was doing seam finishes with this to use the next smallest size, but that's just me. But this is pretty nice, this particular size. So I am going to continue not clipping the fabric to the spindle, and let's try the next size. I should also now say there is an additional instruction on the kind of extra instructions that we now include in the box that weren't on the original instructions card. It says when using smaller tips like the 1/4 of an inch size, we're actually going to do the 1/2 inch size next, but I think this probably will apply as well. You may need help. You may need to help pull the fabric through the machine. So actually, let me make sure I've got that switched off. So I guess we're going to have to kind of give it a little bit of encouragement at this end, is what that's suggesting. I'm going to try not do that if I can help it. But we might have to do this a couple of times just to find out which is the best option and what this machine actually wants us to do. I guess each machine could be even slightly different, depending on the kind of the motor and the mechanism inside and how, you know, temperamental it could be. So this obviously is just going to apply to my machine, but let's get going with the next size. It's in, it didn't click quite as satisfyingly. And actually I'm noticing that because with these smaller strips, and you can probably tell from like this angle up here, that when this feeds, it's not actually straight with this anymore. So it's going to be going off a slight angle. So I am wondering whether we are best kind of shuffling both of these guides up and shuffling the fabric up too over on this spindle so that it's feeding through straighter. And I'm wondering if I get, if for whatever miraculous reason the 1/4 inch size works on this video, That's probably the reason why it didn't work. So I don't think I did that before. So just kind of looking at this kind of from above. Now we're on the smaller tips. We want to make sure that that's feeding in evenly. So I think actually I need to bunch it up a little bit, even a little bit further forward. So you see that? So then we've got this straight line here. Not burning myself. Yeah, so I think that could be important as well. And that isn't on the instructions. Let's grab this. Okay. There's a bit of resistance coming through the tip. I'm just going to take it off and see if I can see what's going on inside and maybe grab it with my tweezers. But it's kind of wrinkling in this window where it's getting stuck. So let me just grab my pin and see if that helps it along a little bit more. Because it is getting quite tight. It's quite a small area for it to come through here. You see that? It's now coming through. It's definitely more work. And as you can see, it's now not feeding evenly through here. So we do have to just kind of be helping it a little bit. Yeah. Oh, do you see that? It kind of got stuck. Okay, it's behaving itself now. Okay, so okay, so here's the results of this one. It's kind of a bit, whoa, it kind of went a little bit curvy. Do you see that? I don't know if you can see that because the first part went through and it didn't press it. So I would say the first 6 to 7 inches again is unusable. But actually after that, it's quite nice. It is quite nice actually. So it fixed itself after that initial kind of struggle. So this is the sort of size I would start thinking about for applique. It's still a little bit too wide for applique for me. I really would like the 1/4 of an inch to work. So that's going to be the next one that we do. Let's do it. We can do this. If it works this time, apologies to the people at Simplicity who told me to just try again, because that's kind of what I'm doing, but live. So, let's get this started. All right. I'm just wondering if I put this here, if this gives me any clues. Yeah, so I guess these 2 lines on this spindle, you see the 2 wider lines here where the clip kind of goes through but stops. So it stops in the middle of these 2 lines. That's kind of going to be where the middle lines up with the tip. I think that's probably important to know as well. It's kind of hard when you're trying to put this through the hole to reach the other side because it gets a little bit lost inside with it being so small. Right, what does that look like? Okay, I'm going to move it over a scooch, tiny little bit. It's kind of these micro movements and stuff that I think make all of the difference, but it also makes it kind of more finicky to use. And then you might be like, well, I may as well just do it on my ironing board and do it myself. I think if you had a lot of this though to do, and it is quite fun watching it come out of the machine. If you're only making a little bit though, I can't imagine I'm going to use this to do small pieces of bias. It's going to have to be, you know, several meters for it to be worth it. Okay, so we're going to take this off the machine again. And it's so narrow, there's not really a lot when you look down here to be able to grab and pull. So this is like my nemesis, this tip. I'm hoping we can do it though. So if you were making like, I don't know, a quilt which has lots of vines, for example, if you're making like a traditional applique quilt, where you need lots of like stems and stuff for flowers, this is going to be the tip you're going to want. And if you make things like stained glass quilts as well, I think this size, maybe the 1/2 inch size would be good too. I did make one of those as a cushion, but it was a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago, and I might want to revisit doing that again. Okay, right, make sure this is all nice and straight now. I've got it coming out of here. Let's clip it in. Snap. Grab. Pull. Please work. I don't want to send it back. Okay. Does it look good from this side? It looks straight. It's looking good. Am I happy to get going on this? I think I am. And now we wait again. Okay, the green light's on. Moment of truth. Let's do this. Oh, yeah, it's getting stuck. Oh, here we go. Oh. Okay, it kind of paused a few. Oh, no, it didn't work. This is the problem. Okay, so this is what's been happening when I've been doing it before. You see how it's gone through, nothing's been pressed here, and then it's just pressing one side. And I didn't have it set up the same way. So I'm going to try this one more time, but kind of giving it a bit of a pull from this end, like the instructions say to do, and then I'm going to call it quits after that. And then I guess it would be up to you guys to decide whether or not you would actually use the 1/4 of an inch size tip. And if you wouldn't, maybe this machine wouldn't be right for you. But if you are like me, that's the kind of the one that makes you actually buy the machine in the first place, then maybe you shouldn't buy it. But we'll try it one more time. We're going to be giving it a fair test, okay? All right, so I pressed this same piece of fabric again with a little bit of that sort of starch alternative product again. I've got it going through here. I actually managed to feed it through easier than last time, which is kind of interesting. If I lift this up, I can see that it's feeding nicely through the end of the tip. You see how those two folds are coming together? Might be kind of hard to see, but hopefully you can see it. We're going to extend it past the end of the machine. So all of this fabric isn't going to have any kind of press on it at all. We're going to give it a little bit of a pull. And there is a bit of resistance, I've got to be honest. It does feel, it's because this is kind of so tight for it to go through, and that's why it says you might need to give it some assistance. So yeah, we're going to try it one more time. Just also for a bit of background, when I've tried this off camera before this video was made, I tried to do it so that I had a little bit more fabric. So I cut it like 1/8 of an inch wider, just to kind of give it a bit more chance to overlap. That didn't work. It makes it, even that tiny extra little bit makes it really hard to feed through. So I tried that, and I did actually try starching it as well, but that didn't seem to make much of a difference. But so this isn't the first time I've run kind of slightly starch fabric through it before, but maybe it's one of those things that you just got to kind of get used to it and get a feel for it. So just to kind of recap what we're doing here, this is completely straight going through the tip. I've checked the tip, make sure that it's coming out nicely here. It's not clipped at the end here, it's just wrapped around the spindle. This is set to the right width for the tip that's going through, and then we're going to give it a little bit of help because it was kind of stuttering when we first did the test. We're going to give it a little bit of a light pull, kind of to encourage it through that hot plate inside the machine. Okay, the light is green, off we go. And I'm pulling very lightly. It's not working. It's not working. It's coming out the tip good, but then when it goes under the iron, it's not pressing at all. You can see that it's coming through correctly, but then I'm only getting half the side pressed in. So yeah, in the interest of fairness, I want to give Simplicity the right to reply on this. I'm going to include all of the conversation in the description below. But if you have any additional questions that maybe you think I should ask them in that support ticket, please also leave a comment if you're early on to this video. But otherwise, maybe it's useful for you for other projects. It's maybe just not the right product for me for what I'm hoping to use it for. So thank you for watching. If these sorts of videos are useful, please subscribe to my channel. I usually make like 3 or 4 videos a year, so it's not a huge thing. And yeah, let's see what they have to say.